Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Create the Ripple podcast. I'm your host, Candice Smiley. Here we trust the ningle and we tell the truth. This is a podcast. We are looking to have conversations that matter, conversations that take courage to engage in, where we cut through the noise that exists online to bring you incredible content, amazing speakers, and stories to inspire you to live your best, listen to yourself, and tell the truth of who you are and who you just might become. Hey, welcome back. It's another episode of the Create the Ripple podcast with me, your host, Candice Smiley. Today, my guest, oh my gosh. So I will be fully transparent that we went up and over the 20-minute limit that I've been trying to keep most of the podcasts recently. And the reason for that is my guest and I, Steve, we got on a roll and we packed this episode with so many nuggets around marketing, your story arc. Honestly, if you are somebody, if you're a speaker, if you're a coach, if you're in business, if you're a mortgage broker, if you're a real estate agent, honestly, it doesn't matter. If your intention is to be better, more efficient, more honest, more transparent in your marketing efforts, and also that you want to have a greater impact, this is definitely the podcast for you. So over the last 8 years, Steve has gone from failing at holding live events to holding over 41 live events for himself and 23 for his clients. He has spoken on more than 200 stages, including at Harvard, built and critiqued over 370 one-to-many sales presentations. During COVID, he pivoted to helping 32 coaches and online entrepreneurs launch storytelling webinars with more than $6.1 million in sales in the last 12 months. Not only that, guys, he's fun to talk to. And I think you're going to pick up on that energy when you listen in. But anyway, I digress. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. And thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to what we got going on here. Thanks so much. Enjoy our show. All right. Well, I'm sitting here with the fabulous Steve, and we've had an incredible pre-chat as always, Steve. But before we get too far in, let's have you share who you are, where you come from, how you got here with my listeners, and then we'll pick up where we left off.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. My name's Steve Warner. I am known right now as the webinar guy. From 2013 till COVID, we held events. So I was a person, I wanted to do public speaking, held more than 70 events. I helped more than 20 clients hold events, all with the focus of a high ticket sale at the end of the event. When COVID hit, we pivoted into webinars instead of virtual events. I'd thrown a lot of stones at virtual events over the years. I didn't feel it would be with integrity to suddenly be like, hey, you should do that. So we went with webinars. Over COVID, we helped 36 different people build out their webinars with, we just crossed $6.2 million in sales between all of them. Then we're going back into live events. I work with people to help them story arc the event. So if you're asking what that is, we look at, like at the end, you're going to sell a high ticket program. How do you pre-frame that so that the event gets people warmed up, meets people where they're at, takes them on a journey, opens them up to the sale? First, we start with that. Then we move even further out. We take all the stories and all the trainings, and we use those 6 to 9 months in advance of the event to fill the event. Most of the people that I've worked with, we double the size of their event, and we usually help them clear anywhere between, like the low end is $500,000 all the way up. The biggest event we've done, we did about $4 million in sales, just short.
Amazing. The event planner in me, that just tickles me because that's just fun. There's something about bringing people together. And I love how, as I'm listening to you talk, there's such an integrity piece to that. Because I mean, we've all been to those events where there's going to be a high ticket sale at the end of it. And it seems to come out of nowhere. And it's gross and it's yucky. And nobody wants to spend any time with it. And of course, it gives people, like you and I, people are like, I don't want to hang out with you. Versus, I was asked yesterday, actually, they're like, why do you love sales? Like you get jazzed when you talk about sales. And I'm like, it's about the relationship, which is core to who I am. And I said, I've met an amazing mentor who taught me years ago that sales is not about pitching somebody and necessarily like locking them into a corner and saying, buy now. I said, it's about taking their hand and leading them through a process where they're going to part with their money, part with their time. Maybe they're going to step into owning who they truly are. That's why sales is scary for people, because it demands a decision. And usually decisions bring change, and nobody likes change. So
That's really funny. There, I was having a conversation with somebody. We can go into the events piece of this. This is off of that though. Somebody who had an old car. This was somebody who lives in the condo next to us. And she's like, I just don't want to get a new car because I'll have to learn how to change the radio. Like I'll have to it's an all new experience. And she's like, it always frustrates me. And I'm like, but her car is broke down like 3 times in the last couple months. And I'm like, she's like, it's got over 200,000 miles, but I don't want to learn. And it's not money for her. That's what's really interesting. She's a software programmer. Like she lives in a really nice condo. She could go buy any car that she wanted, but she's like, I went and looked at a Tesla because somebody told me I needed to look at Teslas. And she was like, I don't even know how to she's like, it's a touchscreen. She's like, it's harder than my iPad. I don't know how to work with that. So to your point about change, I think that is a huge thing. And I think especially when we're talking about like a personal development or a coach or like when you invest in that program, part of the thing that you're investing in is that you want that change, but it is scary for people for sure.
Well, I think we always wonder, what happens, what's next, and that sort of thing. And in my event planning career, one of the reasons I loved to get people together is change can be really empowering and can really move people forward. Now, people are terrified to get up on stage. And a lot of times, what is it? It's like worse than death, right? Don't speak, spiders. And that's crazy to me. And you've made an entire career around helping people to get out of their comfort zones and get up on stage. Also, I got to just say, for anybody who's listening, I am such a huge proponent when people say, well, how long do you need to plan this event? I'm like, 6 to 9 months. And they're usually shocked. I was like, yeah, but here's the point. You got to tell people what you're going to tell them. Then you got to tell them. Then you got to tell them what you told them. Like people are busy. And in order for people to give you, especially on an event or coaching or whatever it is, there is so much distraction, especially now, demanding people's time, effort, energy, that you've really got to be clear on that story and the story arc. So let's talk about that for a second, because I run into so many people who just kind of want to do like the wham, bam, thank you, ma'am marketing, right? Get it out there, get it done, sell it out. And I'm like, that doesn't work anymore. People want to know, what's it about, right? My favorite spot to go on a new website when someone says, check out this product, I go straight to the about page. I don't need to know the ingredients. I want to know who they are, where they come from, and what's their why for doing it.
So, man, there's a whole ton that we can unpack in what you just said. So the first thing, one of the first calls I get usually from people, somebody knows that I'm the events guy and I'll get on the phone. This happened twice in the last 3 months where people call me and they said, we're 4 weeks from the event or we're 3 weeks from the event. And we ran a space for 400 people and we have 50 people signed up. What do we do? And the answer is nothing. Like there is nothing you can do. If you try to give away tickets, you're going to completely devalue your event and you're going to end up spending a lot of time, energy, money on people that aren't going to do anything. And if you it's too late. So 6 months, 3 months is the absolute bare minimum. And I hesitate even saying that because when I say 3 months, people are like, well, I'm a rock star. I'll just take massive action. So we'll do it in 6 weeks. Nope, not going to work. I promise you, not going to work. More than 70 events. Not going to work. If you want to do it correctly, 9 months. So I have somebody right now, we're working with their event for next February. And because we are working the correct way, I know that their event is going to be a multi-million-dollar event. We've already sold 40 tickets like that. And because of that, we got a better deal on the event space and like we're able to plan it so much better. But aside from all of that, this is like the secret. You talked about it feels really yucky to get on stage and make a big ticket, high ticket pitch at the end of an event. The way that you get rid of that yuckiness is you talk about the sale when they buy the ticket. So how do you do that, right? People are like, what? You talk about the program. If you have your mastermind program or if you have your high ticket program already, you talk about results that you've gotten for people in that high ticket program. Russell Brunson does this brilliantly with the 2 Comma Club Award. He showcases people starting 6 months before the event, and they talk about how the event changed their life and how being in Inner Circle or 2 Comma Club changed their life, which are both of his high ticket programs. One is $30K and one is $150K. You know the price before you get to the event, and you know the outcomes that people got. So people know that there's going to be a pitch at the event. When they show up, their mindset is, I'm probably not going to buy, but I know I can get something out of the event. Or I'm here to judge whether or not I trust this guy enough to give him my money. And when you come pre-framed with that, if we go back to the car thing, right? Not that it has anything to do with that lady, but if you go to a car lot and you're just randomly driving by and you're like, oh, that car's kind of cool looking, I'm going to drive on the lot and look at it. You have a wall up. But if you go to a car lot or anywhere, right? Any kind of store to buy something with the intent of, I am looking, your attitude changes and the attitude of the person presenting it changes. And you have a much more like heart-centered focus. I don't really love that term, but if somebody comes to an event knowing that there's going to be a high ticket offer and they're asking, is this the right event? It makes the sale feel better and it's so much easier.
I think too, it changes the energy in the entire room because one of the things I've always hated about sales, and this is old school, so I haven't seen it so much in the last 10 years for sure, but that whole bait and switch, right? Like, okay, great. I've got your yes. Here's the contract. And I've never loved that. And I've loved that there's been this shift where it's like, look, I'm going to pitch to you. It's going to cost you money. I'm going to be wide open with that. But in the meantime, I'm going to offer you a ton of value, like you said, so you can decide in this very, very noisy world if I'm the person, coach, or program for you to make that decision. And I'm driving that home because I know a lot of, smaller entrepreneurs listen to my show. I want them to start thinking bigger. Like, even if hey, I'm not in a position that I could sell, 250 million whatever on an event. You could in 3 years if you shifted the way you were thinking about it and got in touch with the amazing people like my guest today.
I agree 100%. One of the very first clients. So I had been holding my own events from 2013 to 2017. In 2017, I had several people approach me about helping them hold events. One of the first people that I worked with was Eileen Wilder. Eileen right now is, if you know Eileen, she is absolutely crushing it. She teaches people how to speak on stage. The very first event that we held with her, we did 14 people in a room. She did over $90,000 in sales. She was super stressed because she was like, everybody sees the picture of Tony Robbins, right? He's standing on stage and you get like the backlight behind him. Yeah. And everyone's like, I want that event. I need 1,000 people. If I had a penny for every time somebody got on the phone with me and was like, I want 1,000 people at my event. Well, what's your budget? How big are you? How big's your mailing list? Like all the questions, right? And they're like, oh, I'm just getting started. I have this great thing. Like unfortunately, you see a lot of people fail at that. I always tell people, you can start, if you can put 10 people in a room, if you can put 5 people in a room and you feed into them, you can sell. Like I've closed 100% of a room when it's a small event. We used to do, when I was running my events, we did, our big event was 700, but we did a lot of smaller events that were 20 to 50 people. Mm-hmm. There was one event that we did that I sold it out at 10 people because it was a workshop style event. I pitched them on the back end a $25K offer and we sold all 10 of them because you have time to work with those people. So if you're listening to this, you can hold a small event, but I'm going to put a really big asterisk here. To Candice's point, it is not about like the wham bam marketing. It's not, you're going to get benefit. The way that you sell the event is to reach into people and say like, hey, like you're struggling with this problem. I'm going to do a 3-day event where I'm going to walk you through all of it in person. I wouldn't do it on Zoom. I would do it in person right now. Get them there, but you have to, it is about giving them what they need, not like pull it. Like you can't pull, you have to like put it out there and feed into them. I'm not explaining that well.
No, I know. I love that. No. And I really want people to get that because like you say, the number of times I've been called for an event, and like you say, they're weeks out from the event. They have nobody coming and you start asking key questions and they're like, no. I mean, I literally just got a text message from someone who booked his first really big event. It's the second one he's been doing this series, but he's like charging serious money for this one. Mm-hmm. And he's like, if this event goes well, I'm quitting my job. And I'm like, full stop. No, like before you do that, I'm going to introduce you to Steve. But here's the deal. Like people think they've got this amazing idea and it's important to them and it's important to like, it matters in here, but they haven't necessarily done any research to see if it's what the market wants. They haven't done any research to figure out how to communicate that. And I think that is where so many really amazing ideas fall short is they don't really understand that there's a buffer of time and there needs to be a buffer of time in between those two things. So you got to get people on that same level, right? So I know stories is big for you. So let's dive into that for a sec.
Yeah, sure. So I can talk about all the different stories. There's basically 5 stories that you need to use in your marketing. If you use these 5 stories, they will that's all you need in your marketing. Like where you see people post all features and benefits, 3% of the market is in enough pain that they are going to buy from you right now. The other 97% are floating around and they're looking for things. And by telling stories, you get people to lean in and they start to see the result that you get for people, for yourself, that it's called future pacing. They see themselves getting that result. When they see that, they will lean in and they will go from being one of the 97% to somebody who is like, they're hot and bothered. They want it right now. So how do you do that? Stories. Your first story is your hero's journey or your passion story. This is how you earned or learned what you do. It's the biggest story that you have. You should have that ironed out. You should have a 30-second version all the way to like a 10-minute version. Usually when I work with people, we do 3 different versions. We do 30-second, we do a 2 to 3 minute version, and we do the longer 7 to 10-minute version. So that's the first one. The second one is called a parable story. So a parable story is what is the one thing that people need to accept before they can buy from you. This is a big one. I don't know very many people who talk about this, but if you think about this, it's what pre-frames a sale note. It's what moves traffic from being cold and kind of floating around to focused on you. So Russell Brunson, we talked about him earlier. His is, if you accept that a funnel is better than a web page, and a funnel is a key to growing your business, you will start paying attention to Russell, and then you can buy a funnel program. For me, it's that engagement, building the know, like, trust factor, being authentic is more important than teaching. Teaching is the most boring thing in the world. So how do I tell that in a story? I'll do this really quick with you. We were talking earlier about being a certified hypnotherapist. So this is the way that I tell the story. So if you're listening to this, if you're driving your car, don't do this. If you're not driving your car, you'll be okay. We're not going to hypnotize you, but I just want you to think about this with me. I want you to go back to high school, and I want you to go to your favorite classroom. I want you to walk in. I want you to sit down. I want you to feel like it's like to be there. Now I want you to go down the hall, and I want to go to your least favorite class. If it was like me, you probably walked in. It was math class. The math teacher was at a blackboard, not a white erase board, a blackboard. He's writing on the blackboard. He would take a minute and he would yell over his shoulder. He gave us a whole bunch of homework. I would walk in, I would sit down, and right away, he would just be scribbling away. He took very little time to engage us. He just scribbled and yelled and talked. And usually by 10 minutes in, my brain was overloaded. I was sick of doing whatever we were doing. Put my head down, took a nap. I passed a note, or I just left. Now I want you to go back to your favorite teacher's classroom. You probably walked in a minute or two late. They probably knew your name. They probably knew what sports you played or what you were involved with in school. They probably talked to you a little bit. They probably gave you some study hall time to goof off. They might have told some jokes. Now, the question that I have for you is, I bet you can remember something specifically that teacher taught you. But if you ask what your least favorite teacher who just taught and taught and taught, I bet you can't remember anything specific. Now, there are 2 big takeaways from this. The first one is, it's not about teaching, it's about engagement. But the second one is, which one of those 2 teachers knew more? Like, probably the one who taught a lot, but it doesn't matter. You only need to know enough to get somebody a big aha and get them to lean forward and get them to change something, to get them to learn something. You don't need to know everything in the world. A lot of people have this imposter syndrome of like, I don't know enough. Right? I dealt with a lady yesterday. She had 3 college degrees around health and nutrition. 3. She had also gone and worked at a doctor's office, a functional doctor's office. She was in our class and she was scared to be on stage and give a presentation because she was like, I don't know enough yet. I was like, you know more than 99% of the people in the world. Like, yeah, but what if they have a question I don't know the answer to? So this all circles back to, you said people are scared to speak on stage, more scared than dying, right? Why? If you had to guess, why do you think that is?
I think they're afraid of being judged. They're afraid of what people are going to think.
100%. People are really scared of, what are people going to think of me? I'm too fat. I'm too skinny. My clothes don't look good. I've got a big nose. I've got acne, like whatever. People are going to judge me. And then why did that lady not want to speak on stage? Well, I might not know the answer to something, and then I am not going to look good. I will tell you right now to throw all of that out the window. The more authentic, transparent, and real you are, the more people will love you. One of the best stories in the world that highlights this is there was a guy that worked for Barnum and Bailey's circus, and he had a hair lip, and he talked with a lisp. Barnum and Bailey put him on stage, and the guy crushed it because people were like, you're on stage, you're doing something that if you can do it, I can do it. If you show up and you're like, I'm a high school dropout, I learned this stuff by reading books, it's something that they see themselves as being able to do. Now, that's an extreme one, but like if that will work for anyone. So just be honest. If that lady got up and somebody asked a question that she didn't know the answer to, and she just said, I don't know the answer, but I can tell you where to look for it, that's perfectly acceptable. Anyway, going back, it's engagement. We were going through 5 stories, but you look like you might have some thoughts.
I totally love podcasting with someone who podcasts and speaks because they totally get it. I just love what you brought up about the engagement piece, about getting out of people's comfort zones, because I know so many people who have a story to tell. And they say things like, well, I don't know what I would say. And I'm like, just tell the story. Tell the story of how you got through this. Tell the story of how you got through that. Tell them the why you're doing what you're doing. It's a huge part of how I do my referral marketing. I don't sit there and they say, I can take you through the back office. I can take you through the warehouse. I'm like, I don't care.
Nobody
I'll
cares.
go online. I'll read the ingredients. What I want to know is who you are. How many kids do you have? What's your relationship like with your parents? How long have you lived in the city? Why did you choose to start this company? Because people buy, like you say, for that no trust. That's the whole piece of it.
In today's market, you can go online and find anything you want. You can go to YouTube and probably find it. You can definitely Google it and find it, right? But what people really want is somebody that they trust. It's not even about, like it used to be, it's really interesting, like 50, 60, 70 years ago, it was about I had something that was different in the marketplace. Then it became I had something that was better in the marketplace. Now we're like splitting hairs to get better. But what people want is one-on-one attention from somebody that they trust. And that's why you can have somebody, you can have 5 people that teach the same thing in the same way, but they are maxed out on the number of people that they can help. So the next person can work with them. The other thing is I talk a certain way. I move a certain way. I have certain hobbies. There are other people who teach webinars and teach public speaking that do it completely different. They teach the same core things, but they do it differently. And whoever you vibe with better is who you should buy from, who you're going to buy from. So how do you become that person that you vibe with? You tell stories. So like when you tell a story, right? It doesn't matter what the story is. A lot of people that come to me, they're like, well, I don't have enough stories about business. Tell stories about your life. To your point, tell stories about your kids, tell stories about what you ate last night. So my emails, I'm going to tell you how I email because it's fun. Is that good?
No, tell me, because I love it. I've seen such a shift in the way people are communicating with their marketing these days. And again, it just gets me jazzed. So tell me how you communicate so that you share your vibe.
Okay. So this is if you have an email list, you have to go send an email today. I don't care who you are. If you have an email list, I don't care how big it is, raise your hand in the air and say, I'm going to send an email today. All you do. So a story framework is pain, epiphany, outcome. And it doesn't matter whether it's for business, social life, what you ate for dinner. It's all the same. I was hungry. We had an argument about where we were going to go eat, or we were trying to find the best Chinese restaurant, or we didn't know where we were going to go and we were sick of waiting in line. We got to the restaurant. This is what I had. It was amazing or it wasn't. That's the outcome. You can tell I write my emails. So I can't spell very well. I don't use grammar. And I write one sentence and then space in between each one. That's a copywriting trick because it allows people to skim. My email open rate is over 35% consistently because I tell stories. And I tell stories about my life. I've told that story that I told earlier about my neighbor that can't buy a car. I told that story. And then I just link it to, what do you want to do? Are you scared of taking action right now because it would mean change? That's all right. Click here, buy this. Or put it in a PS. PS, I hope you enjoyed the story. I hope it made you smile, laugh, realize something. If you're interested in X outcome, click here. People will click because what you're doing in the whole first part of the email is building rapport. The other thing that I will say is Nobody cares about spelling. Nobody cares about grammar. Nobody cares about any of that stuff.
I've been trying to tell people for forever because they'll point out, I'll do a web page for them. And they're like, this is a spelling error. And I'm like, I know. And I'm like, oh, I left it. I don't care. And then people will message me and say, this is a spelling error. I'm like, great. Did you actually read? That means you read the content. That means
right.
You're paying attention.
The very first email I ever sent, this is a great story. I bought a list. It was like the second event that I held. I bought a list. And don't ever buy a list. Not a good idea. I loaded it into a program that I could send an email through called Sendy, which is still around. It's archaic. It's built on AWS. It doesn't, I would not use it, but it allows you to send one email to an entire list regardless. Like there's no checks. Like if you use MailChimp and you upload a list, they're going to be like, nope, you can't send anything. So that's why I used it. I thought their editor would have had a spell check built into it just because I assumed. First rule, I assumed something. So I wrote the email in the editor. Like this is all like bad. I know, I love it.
This is so good. I'm hoping people are listening. You have to be bad before you can be anywhere near good. So continue. Write the email.
I wrote the email, typey, and I pressed send. I was like, cool, it's ready to go. I think this is what I need to do. It's got a link in it. Send. So the list that I bought was 78,000 people. The email that I sent had 22 misspelled words. And I will tell you, it got read because I got a lot of people that responded. But to what you just said, one of the ladies that responded was like, I'm an English teacher and I can't believe, blah, 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 blah. And are you a Nigerian prince? Or are you going to tell me that I've won $1 million? Like it was something like that. And I was like, well, I'm going to respond to her. So I hit enter and I said, my mom's actually an English teacher and she would be mortified. I'm really sorry. I thought that the program I used had a spell checker. It doesn't. But I promise you, the event is real. Here's a picture of the event contract. If you're interested in coming, let me know. Here's my phone number. She called me and she paid $2,000 to come to the event. Because she was like, when we got on the phone, she was like, I didn't know if this was real or not. And I was like, it's 100% real. I'm really sorry. I can't spell. My mom would be mortified. Like just pretty much rehash the whole thing. But I was like, if you come to the event is real. I promise you it's happening. These are the speakers. This is what's going on. She bought a ticket. And I will tell you, other people bought a ticket as well because I responded to all of the people who said there was a misspelled word. And I don't care.
I know. And that's what's so interesting to me. We were recently doing an event and we had this long strategy in our marketing and they only wanted to sign the contract for 2 months. And I was like, I can do shit for you. Sorry, everybody. I can do nothing for you in 2 months. But what we're looking to do is, and we had this whole strategy, which obviously wasn't for them. That's fine. We got to say no, thank you. We didn't renew. But it was like, the expectation with all of that in terms of that short timeline, we still had 5 to 6 people who were coming to this event. And we were like, that's amazing. We did so good. And they're like, right, what were we going to do about selling them? And I was like, you guys have totally missed the point. We haven't shared the story. We haven't even gotten started. And like, we're going to find someone who's more focused on selling the event. And I said, you know what?
Got it.
Oh my God.
Those are like, I have those conversations more often than not because I'm very clear, same as you, on who we're going to work with. If you come to me 4 weeks before an event, there's nothing I can do. I might be able to force sell some tickets through some good email copy, but they're not going to be the people you want and you're going to hate your life. Like, just let it go.
It's crazy because, there's just, and I see this oftentimes that people, and whether it's because finances or whatever, and then I think, well, then take a pause, take 6 months, go do what you need to do to put some cash in the bank so that you can move this forward, right? So that you can do these things. And lately, like when I named my price for a 3-month, like, well, okay, so let's say you want to do everything for 3 months. And I named the price, I felt really comfortable saying, done the math. This is actually a good deal for you. I could charge you double, but I can do this for you. And they're like, oh, and I was like, well, then good luck. And I want to drive that home for people, like change your mindset. It's not going to happen tomorrow. Those people that you see who have big experiences, if you read their books, if you read how they got there was 2, 3, 5, 6, 10 more years where they were pounding the pavement, where they were making the right connections. They were getting their toe in the door, right? And I think people need to know that. It's not that you can't sell, like we're hearing from you, 90,000, 250,000 or more. You've just got to get the mindset shift figured out. So we've talked about 2 stories. I know you want to jump into that, but let's make sure we loop back around because I love the value that we're leaving with people.
Okay. So we're going to go back to the stories. I got one piece I want to like shoehorn in really quick.
Just love your face. You're like,
so Tony Robbins, everybody looks at Tony Robbins. They're like, I want to do that event. 2 things. The first thing is, if I put you on stage in front of 10,000 people, what do you think would happen? If you have very little experience public speaking, you would have a meltdown.
Yeah.
You would be in the back, just like curled up in the fetal position. Like, I don't know what to say. Tony Robbins started off doing an MLM pitch for pots and pans to 5 people at a time. If you don't believe that, you can go find his story. He started off, he was working for Jim Rohn. You have to really dig to find the story. He's done a good job of whitewashing it. But then he started off his first firewalks he would do on the beach in Santa Monica on the beach because there was no cost. He would charge people $20, a $20 bill, snap, snap, in front, like walking on the beach. He'd be like, hey, do you want to learn how to have mental breakthroughs? Do you want to learn how to have more sex? Do you want to learn how to have, he would use whatever he could to get people to give him $20. He'd get 10 or 15 of them gathered around a fire walking pit, and he would have them walk across fire on the Santa Monica beach. That's where Tony Robbins started. And he built that up slowly. It did not happen overnight. And I know everybody wants everything right now. If you haven't heard the marshmallow study about delayed gratification, Google the marshmallow study. It is the game of entrepreneurship is a long game. It's a marathon.
I have a 7-year-old. We've tried that. It's really, really cute.
Nice. That's awesome. I love it. Okay. Stories. So first story, hero's journey. Second story, parable. Third story is a testimonial. You need to have a good case study of somebody that you have worked with. If you do not have one, go find one. And I love the people that are like, don't help people for free. Until you have a couple testimonials, you want people. Now, that does not mean work with everybody. That means go find somebody who says, I really want this outcome. And what you do is you say, look, I will work with you on one condition. We meet 3 or 4 times, 5 times, whatever. And you have to take action. Like, you have to get them so involved. And they're going to say, like, you don't want to just help anyone. And then you say, the reason I'm doing it is to get a testimonial. Then you charge a little bit of money. You move up the pyramid. Don't go out. I've seen people do this. I saw a guy that I knew from ClickFunnels went out and sold a 10K package to a chiropractor for a service that he didn't know how to deliver. And he was like, I'm going to figure it out. We all told him it was a bad idea. He sold the package and then he had a meltdown and he ended up refunding it and going back and getting a day job because it caused so much pain in his life. It's really easy to say, if somebody pays me 10 grand, I'll figure out how to do X, Y, Z, until you have the 10 grand and you feel immense amounts of guilt and pressure. So start for free, get some results, then charge $100, then charge $300, then charge $1,000.
I know. I love it when people call me and they'll say, what should I price my course at? I want to price it at this and I want to price it at that. And I was like, how many hours are you going to work on it? What's the skill you're bringing in? Like, that shouldn't be a question. If you're trying to figure out where to price it at, you either don't understand its value or you haven't done the thing. Right, to know, because once you do it, and I started off as an event planner this way. I did 3 or 4 events for free. So I could actually track how many hours it spent. Who did I need to know? What kind of other resources I need to have access to? Yes, it cost me money. It cost me. And then I looked at my receipts and went, okay, it has to at least be this much because this is how much it costs me to do the event. Then there's my time. And then there's this. And then by the end of it, people would say, well, how do you just know? I'm like, because I've done so many of these events. It's going to be X number of hours. I'll need this budget. I'll need this wiggle room. This is the price. Give it to me. Like, right. You don't know that unless you've actually done it. And it's always scary for me when people call and say, what should I price the event at? I don't want to do it for free. And I'm like, well, if you're asking me this question, you need to do it for free so you can figure out what's an appropriate price to call. And so that when you're pitching it to people, you're not feeling bad because people's subconscious pick up on that. They know when you're full of
crap.
Thank you.
Really quick, I'll tell this story because it makes sense and it's pertinent. when I started, Dan Kennedy, who was my mentor, the first mentor that I had, was like, I built my business going around doing free sales presentations, driving to, at the time, he sold it for $49, a one-day seminar that he hosted in a hotel. He was like, you can do the same thing. So I started doing that. I started going around and speaking. And this was, Facebook was around. I did a few Facebook presentations, but I went around to local area businesses and I said, hey, like, this is what I teach. Would you be interested in it? It's completely free. And I got so much goodwill from doing that, like that. And it builds your confidence. This all goes back to the game of entrepreneurship is not a sprint. It is a marathon. And if you try to run it as a sprint, you're going to hate your life. Like you're not going to make any money. You're going to be stressed about money all the time. You're going to be trying to figure out the next shiny object. Instead, take everything that works. Like they're fundamentals, right? This is another thing that like great coaches talk about. It's just about fundamentals. So pick where you want to be. Do you want to be on Facebook? Do you want to be on email? Do you want to be live? Whatever. And just do the fundamentals. Do it over and over and over. It's not sexy, but it works. Okay. Third story was your client testimonial. And all you do, instead of asking people for a testimonial, hey, can you give me a testimonial? Get them on Zoom, ask them, what were you struggling with? Why did we work together? Why did you reach out to me? How was that manifesting in your life? Like what was going on? Well, I need to make more money. Why did you need to make more money? I needed to send my kids to school. Well, how'd that make you feel? Like dig into the pain. That should be 40% of the interview. 10% is, how'd you find me? Somebody referred me, or I found you online, or you talked to me. You never know what's going to come out of that, but keep it short. It should be about 10%. And then 50% is, okay, so we started working together. What were the outcomes? How did that affect your life? How did that grow your life? Then you edit it all down or you don't. I don't even edit them usually. They're raw. They're like 15 to 20 minutes. They're great. You can use those stories. You can tell them. You can send them to people. They work really well. So third story is testimonial. Fourth story is your product story. So whatever you do, whether you are a coach that gives a service or whether you sell a widget, how did that product come to be? And there's usually an invention story. So if you know about Dyson, there's a Dyson story. The difference between this and your hero's journey, your hero's journey is about your personal journey. Usually the product or service plays a secondary role, plays backup. In the product story, it becomes the main story. Like you become the second place story. So that's your product story. So what do we have so far? Tell me.
Like how I do some homework. So first we had the hero's journey.
Yep.
Then the third was testimonial. What was the middle one? I was busy thinking about how I'm going to, thank you, how I'm going to put this into what I'm doing next and how I'm realizing how badly I really want to work with Steve for some of the projects I've got going on. So let's give it to the listeners again. So number one, we had the hero's journey, which I love. Number two was
parables.
Thank you. Number three was your testimonial. And number four is your product story. Number five is
hang on. Hero's journey, parables.
Yeah.
Customer journey.
Testimonial.
Blah, 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 blah. Yep. Testimonial. Now you got me going. The fourth one is your product story. And I got to remember the fifth one. The fifth one, you said it too fast. Hang on. I'm like, oh no, I'm confused.
It's called Mom Brain. I have it.
Yes. I don't have Mom Brain. I teach this all the time. That's what's so crazy is I should just know what it is. Well, we're going with four for right now.
Four works. Honestly, if people just started to think about that, whether it's events or in their marketing, and I just love how you say this story arc. And people always say, well, what's in the story? And if I even think about, because I got my sales start doing MLM as well. And during those presentations over and over and over again and follow the likes of Jim Rohn, which you can listen to online for free. So it's like people are like, well, I can't afford it. I'm like, listen, there is so much information at your fingertips. Just go watch, just go listen, find your vibe. When you find your vibe, you'll know. I mean, I got into podcasting, same reason I was introduced to podcasts. They were free. I could listen to them on my drive. I used to drive about an hour for work every day. So I was really investing. I know. It's been a journey, investing in myself. Listen to somebody's podcast. They had a guest on and I loved her. Like I literally paused that podcast, went to go find her podcast, started listening, bought her program, had her as a guest on the show. Like that woman totally changed my life. And so people would say all the time, how do I, get where you are? Or how do I do this? And I'm like, it's the same story. It's the same for you. It's the same for me. It's the same for Sony Robbins. We just got like hungry for change. We weren't like, your lady friend who was like, I don't want to get a new car because I have to learn a new radio. We were like, no, I will learn the new radio, even if that's a pain in my, for so long. I will be uncomfortable. I used to go early to presentations and I would stand on stage and I would imagine it being speaking, and I would go through my presentation. I was told by a really good mentor who said at the time, he gave me 2 pieces of advice. I couldn't afford them. He said, I'll give you 2 pieces of advice. One of them was, you figure out your story and you write out your speech. So if someone says, here's the microphone, the speaker is sick, you can step up and go. So it was like, have a product story, because that was, of course, the industry I was in at the time, and have your training story, like figure these 2 things out. And I had those things literally in my purse every presentation. And wouldn't you know it, there came a time when somebody didn't show up.
Yep.
And they knew that. And they said, do you have your stories? Let me review them. Okay, great. We're putting you on. And people are always like, well, how did you get from nobody to somebody? And I was like, I was prepping. I was arriving early. I was staying late. I was putting away the chairs. And honestly, the biggest challenge when I started to have success was learning that I didn't have to do it all anymore. Because I was like, oh yeah, now I'm the person who shows up and sits on stage. Right? Like, I don't have to manage the door and I want to lead people with that. Like, the story, this arc is so important. Did you remember?
I did. But I'm going to give you.
Your face was like, I don't want to forget.
I'm going to give you one more piece that just to that. Like, one of the things that I always do, so we never talked about it, but I've lived in Airbnbs for 6 years. I started doing that because I was going to where we were building events. I would always go find all the events, look on Eventbrite, look on the city website, find all the events. I would reach out to the people and I would say, hey, I know you're probably fully booked for your event. I just wanted to let you know that I'm in town. I can be available on very short notice. And these are the things that I can talk about. If you have a cancellation, reach out to me. And that always, always, always leads to events. It still leads to events. This still do this.
Such a good idea.
You have to, okay, so these are the things that you need to do this. You have to know what you speak about. You should have a speaker reel, and it's leading with supporting them. It's not, hey, I'd really like to speak. And by the way, if you've already booked all your speakers, I can. It's, hey, I'm just in town. And if you need some support, I used to do this. I don't do this anymore. But I would say, if you need some support, just like you did, I've run more than 30 events. I've run more than 50 events because this was in 2014, 15, 16. I can show up if you need some extra hands. I'm happy to be on stage doing whatever you need. People would be like, oh my God, you are a godsend. And 9 times out of 10, what would happen if they said like, yeah, we need help setting up? They would say, you know what? We'll give you 15 minutes on stage just because. We'll cram you in. And that got me more speaking engagements than reaching out to people. Yes, they were free, but they always led to clients.
Well, my dad always had this advice. He was like, he did Toastmasters for years. And he said, you got to be ready to pray, preach, or die all in 5 minutes if you're showing up at an event. I know, I loved it. But it's been good advice in terms of speaking, because people know if I show up at an event, even now, especially now that we're back in person, if I show up at an event, I'm always dressed, I'm ready to go, because people know somebody cancels, they need an MC, they need something else. I can literally get up there and go, okay, I just got asked to be up here, and I can roll with it while the next person is speaking. We can turn around and do that. And that's made such an impact. Okay. And we got to bring this thing in for a close. So what's number 5?
Number 5 is a value story. So this is actually the reason that I couldn't remember it is because it's kind of Inception-like.
Oh, and it's huge. Value story. Oh my God.
So think about everybody on their masthead all over the place has quote values. You can trust us. We act with integrity. Instead of saying that, come up with 3 or 4 stories. So you should have 5 value stories. 3 of them should be on values: trustworthiness, integrity, acting with your customer's best interests in mind. The other 2 stories should be weird things about your life, because we talked about rapport and building rapport. People that know that I live in Airbnbs know that I like to travel. People that know that I like fine dining, I talk about fine dining experiences in my emails. That builds rapport. The other stories are, I have a story about how when COVID hit, I had 3 live events on the books. We bought a ticket to go see Van Halen. Ticketmaster refused to refund my ticket because of COVID. In that moment, I realized I needed to refund these 3 live events. That was over $100,000 leaving my bank account. I don't care who you are, how much money you have, that hurts. I sent the money back to people, and one of those people reached out to me and said, hey, we'd love to do a webinar instead. We know we have to move online. That started me doing webinars and led to where I am now. That value story shows that I put my customers first and that you can trust me. That is much more better than me saying you can trust me.
We've had way too much fun here. Much more better. Yes, your mother would be appalled. Anyway, thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
This was amazing. I know we got to wrap this thing up. Thank you to my listeners for listening. I hope you got a ton of value. I know I did. And Steve, you and I definitely need to chat about some of the stuff that I've got up and coming for the next season, which will be starting in September. We're taking a break over the summer. So I will be in touch. And then anybody else, if you loved hearing from Steve and you want to see what else he's got going on, we will have all of the contact information for him, of course, in the show notes. Take a look at that. Follow along. Thank you so much again, Steve. This has been a hoot.
No problem. It is my pleasure. I will see you next time. We'll chat more.